bow arms. It's one of the fastest ways to make a student sound immediately better is to work on their bow arm. And it's one of the biggest issues for so many of us. When people ask me what instrument I play, I find myself, let's say if I don't have my violin in my hands, obviously. What instrument do you play? Oh, I play the violin. I find myself doing, I play the violin. And I realize that's probably bizarre to the public, right? What the hell is that, you know? It feels so unnatural to me to say I play the violin. In fact, it stresses me out to do that. I play the violin. No, I play the violin. Can everybody try that? Play the violin. Yeah? No big deal. Who wants to be less stressed on stage? Who wants to be more free and imaginative? Right? Who wants to take risks on stage? Absolutely. Who also wants everything to be very predictable on stage? Right? Exactly what you practiced. Of course, there are all kinds of other exercises you have to do to have a great bow arm. You have to practice martelé. You have to practice spiccato. You have to practice sans filet, long, slow bows. Right? All that stuff. You have to do all that stuff. But truly, when you're preparing for a concert and you're building confidence, it's the big picture stuff. We can get a whole lot closer to that level of coordination, athleticism, speed, confidence, looseness, with one particular fast track exercise, I suppose you could call it, that I am sort of obsessed with. Okay, what's this piece? Okay, hands went up. What is it? Right? Right? Yeah, you're learning it right now. Beautiful. Okay, so the right arm, I like to call it the predictor. And when the right arm is in charge, this can unlock so many things. And of course, just the asterisk to this entire lecture is you have to work on the left hand for 10 years, you know, of dedicated exercises and hand frame and thumb. We're not talking about that today. That's a given. This exercise I with my students. And it puts the correct arm in the driver's seat when you're on stage. What?
Presto from Bach G minor.
Very good. Presto from Bach G minor, right? Right, okay, so I practice that open strings exercise on that piece at least 3 times a week. Do I play this piece? No, I don't. Honestly, I don't play Bach in public very often. Do I have any volunteers who have something string crossing E that is giving them some grief that they might like to work on? Yes, Caleb, come on up. Okay, what is it that gives you grief right now?
The beginning of Izai 2.
Izai 2.
Yeah.
First movement. Let's hear it. I mean, that's not so bad for 9 in the morning. Pretty good. Yeah. Could you riff off that other one, the one that starts on the D? Yeah. So, I mean, you're not having a tremendous amount of trouble to begin with, right? But does it worry you? Does this passage? Why does it worry you?
Especially in like the second one I played, I think shifting from here with the reach back 1 to first.
So you find yourself still thinking about the left hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not what we want to think about on stage, right? You kind of want to have this carved out predictable plan here, and the left hand just like falls in the slots, basically, right? So could you slowly, you've probably done this with open strings a little bit, but could you show us how you would practice with the open strings? That maybe the first one? And when you, first round, I want you to do like really, really great tone. Really nice, just like. By the way, when you rosin your bows, guys, don't go. Because guess what part isn't getting rosined? The middle where you play. Sometimes I like to put my thumb under here and go like, not your oil, but the thumbnail. And I go. Right. And you probably don't want to do that like right before you walk on stage. I like to do it about 30 minutes before or before a lesson. And then I like rub it in. Okay, so a little more sounding point, a little more tone. Good, and I think as you go to the lower strings, you could probably go lower the bow. Try one more. Good, now add one more thing. When you get to the D and G string, go really flat bow here. Try something. I'm going to send you to, you know where that little room is over there? I'm going to send you over there. You're going to go practice that for like 5 minutes. Okay? And then I'm going to bring you back. Okay. Deal? Yes. And make sure when you're practicing a couple things. Make sure you're really concentrating on good sound. And when you go faster, that's good. You'll probably lose a little contact. That's normal. And that's actually okay. Okay? You can go back and do it slowly, and then do it fast, and then slowly. Medium, you know, sort of build. In 5 minutes, you could, I mean, that's only like, how many notes? 12 or 15 notes. So, like 5 minutes is pretty good amount of time, right? So we're obviously practicing a lot of stuff that's like super coordination, right? Everything's a bow change. But this exercise works for lyrical playing too. Yeah. Okay, we'll do another guessing game. That was a little tough. Any guess? Oh, that's a good guess. Yeah. I mean, I've taught this so many times. The students say great tone, and then it's out the window right here because they have to shift, and then string crossing. You know, there's just 100 things that can go wrong, and you could talk about each one and micromanage each one, and you have to. But there he goes. He's off to work. If I told him to go do that for like 45 minutes, he would do it. When the bow leads the shift, oh my gosh, it's like no worries at all. It's easy. Shifting with the bow, right? With bow speed. So these are like what my lessons were always like, Mr. Lipsett. It's just constant attention to the bow. And some time every day, of course, would be spent on my left hand and working on my shifting, maybe without talking about the bow. But ultimately, it always came back to use the bow. Move the bow. Don't stop the bow, right? If Mr. Lipsett had a tattoo, which he never would, it would say, don't stop the bow. Because it's true, like, and, you know, bow speed is just key to everything. Bow speed's everything. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or revelations so far? Not about what I said, just about, you know, maybe after the concert last night. Any of your observations from watching Ray last night?
Yeah, on the topic of like string crossings, all also, especially, I was impressed, like string crossings during like a legato line with like a bunch of notes.
Yeah.
Like doing Paganini, for example, it almost sounds like he's playing a run that, goes,
Oh yeah, it's,
on every octave. And
yeah.
it just,
yeah, and actually, I'm so glad you mentioned that. We talked a little bit about this last year. If you guys some of you were here, we talked about arpeggios, and we talked about one of the tricks to get your like really smooth bow changes is watching the tip of your bow, right? So if your tip does this, then you're not really being very artistic and smooth, even though it sounds smooth. If you play Tchaikovsky like, right, which is how a lot of people sound when they play it, and that adds stress. All of that adds stress. All that noise adds stress. But if you watch the tip of your bow, it still had to cover the same distance, right? It still had to go from here, basically, to here. But I did it in a way that you maybe didn't even notice it was moving, right? So when we are crossing strings, let's go back to a couple last logistical things about crossing strings. It's really important. The elbow. How many of you have heard from your teachers at some point that you should really hang in your elbow, right? I've heard that. Hang, right? Really hang. But when I was younger, I took that a little bit too literally. Because I actually, when I came to Mr. Lipsett, I kind of looked like this. And so the first thing to do was to get stuff in order here. And if we have time, I'll show you my little thoughts on this famous bow exercise. But basically, I dropped my elbow and then I just like left it there forever. I was like, that's a rule. Okay. That's not helpful there, right? It's also not helpful for it to move all over the place, right? You want to, this sounds corny, but you want to kind of set it and forget it. You want to get your bow arm. You might have heard Nathan Cole talking about this too. Do you remember where he was talking about setting up the bow like playing double stop, right? Okay, so if you have something like the Polonaise, that crosses over, you don't want to hit the two strings in the middle, then you are really, really keeping the elbow where it is. And I want to just disclaimer, I'm talking about the elbow, I'm not talking about the shoulder. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking, shoulders always down. Shoulders are always down. But having your elbow up a little bit higher. How many of you play Bach that has moments that go like this? Anybody play the slow movement of Bach, right? Right? So one of the biggest mistakes I see is that students start here. Oh. Or they're gonna go and they hit other strings, right? It's so common. I know, Simon, that is the bane of your existence. You hate those extra noises. And I do too. And the audience actually does too, even though they can't put their finger on it. They just know that if the next person comes out and they don't do that and they sound clear, they like that better. So the elbow is your friend, and there's a lot of nuance to it. Okay, so that could be a whole lecture in itself. But basically, I think when you're watching yourselves in the mirror, which all of you do all the time, right? Observing yourself, remembering Rei Ushikubo, his position. Truly, I've been so inspired by all of the performers I've ever seen. I take it to the practice room and I visualize and I try to model, because how people look when they play is really telling. You've probably heard about competitions that can be judged sometimes with the sound off. And it's not just about someone making faces, like, and they're the winner. No, it's like they're athletic, and you can tell it with the sound off. And when people are using their bodies ergonomically and athletically, which is mainly this arm, it works. The violin works, right? If you're talented already, you put in the work on your left hand and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, Charlotte, would you run and get our lovely Caleb, and we'll wrap it up. See how he's been doing his messages. we've talked about these. We've talked about macro ideas today, about big things. Obviously, this also is in tandem with what happens in the fingers for string crossing. More on that later, maybe next week. Hey, let's go. Strings, barely, half tempo, but when you take it all the way, it's actually worth something. Okay, now here's the final trick. This is the best way to do this. You're going to play the open string thing again with full music and everything. Full, like you just did. I love that. And you're going to do it like 3 or 4, whatever you want, 3, 4, 5 times. And then without telling us, without me saying anything, you're just, the left hand's going to like, on the next round, the left hand's going to just drop it without you even knowing it. Wow. Imagine if you did that like a little bit every single day. Then, you know, the amount of detail that you're able to hear. Don't forget to vibrate that little. Hold that a little bit longer. So that tells you, like, okay, so then when he does the open exercise next time, can you do the open exercise next time? And the last note, a little more girth, huh?
Of the same.
Same one. Da-dum. Yeah, you want to do it exactly like you're going to do it. So you go maybe a little slower, right? Da-dum. Yeah, so you can really become a master of your bow division, bow speed, all of that. When you were doing it, you probably noticed he was kind of like fingering here. That's okay to do maybe on day one. I'd get rid of that by tomorrow though, so that you're just fully, I mean, because then you're still a little bit thinking about the left hand, right? Even though not as much, because you're not worrying about intonation or anything like that. But yeah, thank you, Caleb. That was really we'll wrap it up, because I could go into the stuff, but that's a whole other discussion. So we'll stop there. And thank you all for being such a great audience.